What an idiot! She thinks she is paying for the grandkids' college tuition, but in reality, those $300,000 are for our trip to Europe. Those words came out of my daughter-in-law's mouth from the other side of the door. My son laughed. My son, the boy I raised alone for years, the man to whom I gave everything, replied, "It's okay, babe. Just don't drag out the transfer of the assets. We still have to sell her house and the land." At that moment, standing in front of the door to their home with a container of food I had prepared with so much love, I understood that I had just handed over $300,000, my life savings, to two con artists. And the worst part of all is that one of them carried my blood. But let me tell you how I got there, because nobody wakes up one day discovering that their own family plans to strip them of everything. These things happen slowly, with a smile here, a lie there, small signs that you ignore because love is blind. My name is Eleanor. I am 66 years old, and for the last 3 years, I have lived alone in this house that I built together with my late husband. He passed away leaving me this home, 2 city lots that we bought with sacrifice, and some savings that I kept for decades working as a seamstress doing alterations. I was not a millionaire, but I had enough to live with dignity and help my family when they needed it. My son James was always the center of my universe. I raised him practically alone because my husband worked day and night to give us a better life. I sewed wedding dresses, fixed clothes, and hemmed pants until the early hours of the morning while James slept in the back room. Every stitch carried a dream, that he would study, that he would have opportunities, that he would never lack for anything. And I succeeded. James graduated, got a good corporate job, married Jessica 8 years ago, and gave me 2 beautiful grandchildren. At first, Jessica seemed like an angel fallen from the sky, sweet, attentive, always with a perfect smile and kind words. "Dearest Mom," she would say to me while hugging me with that expensive perfume she wore. On Sundays, they would come over for lunch. The kids would run around the backyard, and I felt complete, surrounded by the family I loved so much. I cooked their favorite dishes, baked the apple pie that James had loved since he was a boy, and listened to their stories about work and daily problems. It was my routine, my happiness, my reason for existing after becoming a widow. But things began to change subtly, like when a fine fabric starts to fray at the edges. First came the casual comments. Jessica would look at my living room and say, "Mom, this house is so big for you all alone. Don't you feel lost in here?" Or when I was preparing food, "Oh, how cute. You still cook in that traditional way. I do everything in the convection oven now." Small phrases that sounded innocent but carried a hidden edge, like needles hidden in cotton. Then the comparisons began. My friend Patricia's mom moved into a small condo and says it is much more practical. She doesn't have to clean so much anymore. Or, "Oh, did you know that my cousin's mother-in-law sold her big house and used that money to start a business for her children?" How generous, right? Every comment was a poisoned seed planted with care in my head, making me feel that perhaps I was being selfish for keeping this property, that perhaps I should do more for them. James changed, too. The Sunday visits became bi-weekly, then monthly. When I called on the phone, his answers were short, distracted. "Yeah, Mom." "Uh-huh. Okay. I'll call you later. I'm busy." Busy. That word became his answer for everything. Busy to visit me, busy to bring the kids to see me, busy to sit with me and have a coffee like we used to do. I justified everything thinking it was normal, that young people have their lives, their responsibilities, their own world. One afternoon, while I was sewing a lavender dress for a client's niece's prom, Jessica arrived without warning. She wore that smile that was starting to seem too perfect to me, too practiced. "Mom, I need to speak with you about something important." She sat on the sofa, crossed her legs, and sighed as if she were carrying the weight of the world. "James and I are going through a difficult time financially. The company where he works is making cuts, and we don't know if they are going to lay him off. We need to make some urgent repairs on the house because there is a leak that is ruining everything." My mother's heart squeezed. "How much do you need?" I asked without thinking twice. "About $5,000, she replied, lowering her gaze as if ashamed. The next day, I went to the bank and transferred the money. She hugged me, called me her savior, and promised to pay it back soon. She never did, and I never asked for it because that is what mothers are for, right? To support, to help, to give without expecting anything in return. 2 months later, It was James who arrived with another story. They needed money for the children's private school. The tuition had increased. Another $4,000 left my account without hesitation. Then came Jessica's medical expenses. A supposed minor surgery that cost $3,000 more. Then the car that broke down. The credit card debts. The refrigerator repair. Every month there was a new emergency. A new reason to ask me for help. I gave and gave because that is how I was taught, because I believed I was fulfilling my role as a mother and grandmother. Meanwhile, my savings were starting to thin out, just like my patience every time I called and nobody answered. When I went to visit them without warning, there was always an excuse not to let me in. They were going out, they had company, the kids were sick. The door to their house became a wall that grew higher and higher between us. One night, my neighbor Susan came over to have tea with me. We had known each other for 20 years, and she was always direct, with no filter. "Eleanor, forgive me for meddling where I haven't been called, but I saw your daughter-in-law the other day at the mall. She was carrying bags from very expensive stores, showing off a brand-name purse, and laughing with her friends while they drank coffee in that new place where a cup costs $15. I remained silent, feeling something twist in my stomach. "Maybe she had a good month," I responded weakly. Susan looked at me with that mixture of pity and concern that you never want to see in the eyes of a friend. The days following that conversation with Susan were strange. I started noticing things I had ignored before, details that my motherly love had hidden under layers of justifications. When James finally called me after 2 weeks of silence, his voice sounded rushed, mechanical, like he was reading a script. "Hi, Mom, how are you? Everything is fine over here. The kids send their regards. Hey, I have to hang up. We're heading out. Heading out. Always heading out, always busy, always in a hurry to end the call with me. I tried to visit them one Sunday, like in the old days. I baked that apple pie that James liked so much, put on my pearl-colored dress, the one that made me feel presentable, and rang their doorbell with a smile on my face. Jessica opened the door just a crack. Her expression changed when she saw me. "Oh, Mom, what a surprise. We were just heading out. We have a family lunch." The irony hit me like a slap in the face. I was their family, and I was on the wrong side of that door. "Are the kids here?" I asked, trying to see inside. "They are with my parents. They took them yesterday." Lie. I could hear children's laughter inside the house. I walked away slowly down that street where I had played so many times with my grandchildren, feeling how every step weighed more than the last. Something was not right. Something had changed, and I had been too naive, too trusting, too blind to see it. That night I could not sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling of my bedroom, reviewing every conversation, every request for money, every excuse to keep me away. The pieces were starting to form an image I did not want to see. The next morning, Jessica called me with that sweet voice that no longer convinced me. "Dearest Mom, apologize for yesterday. We were very stressed. Can we come visit you this afternoon? James wants to talk to you about something important." My heart jumped between hope and fear. Maybe they had realized their coldness. Maybe they were coming to apologize, to reconnect. What a fool I was to think that. They arrived at 4 in the afternoon. James carried a folder under his arm and wore that forced smile I had seen lately. Jessica wore an ivory dress that must have cost more than $300, new shoes, and that perfume that permeated everything in its path. They sat in my living room, rejected the coffee I offered, and James opened the folder on the table. "Mom, we need to talk about something serious. It is about the children's future." His tone was grave, rehearsed. "Times are changing, and education is getting more expensive. We want to ensure the kids have the best education possible, that they can go to a university, have opportunities that we didn't have." I nodded, not yet understanding where this was going. "We have been researching, and we found an incredible opportunity. There is an educational investment fund that guarantees full payment of college for both children, including master's degrees if they wish." Jessica leaned forward. Her eyes shone in a way that I now recognize as greed disguised as maternal concern. "It is a unique investment, Mom. It is only available this month, and we need to act fast. Other grandparents are already securing their grandchildren's future. You have always said they are your priority, right? How much does it cost?" I asked, feeling my throat close up. James pulled some papers from the folder, documents full of numbers and small print that I could barely read without my glasses. $300,000. I know it sounds like a lot, but think about it. Mom, it is your grandchildren's future. It is the peace of mind of knowing that they are going to have a guaranteed education, that they will never lack that opportunity. You have those savings that Dad left, that you have kept all these years. What better use could you give them than ensuring the education of your own grandchildren? The world stopped for a moment. $300,000. Practically everything I had saved. The result of 35 years of work, of sleepless nights sewing, of sacrifices, of every dollar saved with discipline. My husband and I had dreamed of that money as our safety cushion, the inheritance I would one day leave to James, the backup for any medical emergency in my old age. It is a lot of money, I murmured. Jessica immediately took my hand with that rehearsed softness. We know, Mom, and believe me, we wouldn't ask you this if it weren't absolutely necessary, if it weren't for the good of your grandchildren. Think of them, of their future. You have this house, you have the land, you won't lack for anything. And we will be here to take care of you always. We are your family. James nodded, his expression serious, almost urgent. Mom, this opportunity closes in 3 days. Afterward, it won't be available anymore, and we are going to lose the chance to secure all of this. The kids are going to thank you for life. You are going to be the grandmother who gave them the opportunity to succeed, to not have to worry about paying for expensive universities. I looked at my son, that man who had grown up before my eyes, and I wanted to see the boy who used to hug me and tell me I was the best mom in the world. I wanted to believe this was real, that they were genuinely thinking about my grandchildren's well-being. Can I see the documents calmly? I asked. James's expression changed subtly. A flash of impatience crossed his face. Of course, Mom, but remember that the clock is ticking. We can't lose this opportunity over unnecessary doubts. That night, I tried to read the documents. They were pages and pages of legal terms I didn't completely understand. I called David, a lawyer and family friend who had helped my husband when he was alive. David, could you check something for me? I explained the situation over the phone. There was a long silence on the other end. Eleanor, is your son asking you for $300,000 for an educational fund? Can you send me photos of the documents? I took pictures of every page and sent them via text message. 20 minutes later, David called me. His voice sounded worried. Eleanor, these documents are very generic. They don't clearly specify the institution. There are no real guarantees. The clauses are vague. I recommend you don't do anything hasty. Give me a few days to investigate more thoroughly. But I didn't have days. James had been clear. 3 days or the opportunity was lost. The next morning, James arrived early at my house. He came alone this time. Have you thought about it, Mom? We need to do the transfer today. His tone was drier, less affectionate. David is reviewing the documents, I told him. His face tensed up. David? Why did you involve David in this? This is a family matter. Mom, don't you trust me? Don't you trust your own son? His words pierced me like knives. Guilt started to climb up my chest. What kind of mother was I to doubt my son? It's not that I don't trust you, James. It's just that it is a lot of money, and I want to be sure. He stood up from the armchair abruptly. You know what, Mom? Forget it. If you don't trust us, if you prefer to listen to strangers before your own family, then you don't deserve to be part of this. The kids are going to grow up knowing that their grandmother could have helped them and decided to be selfish. Selfish. That word echoed in my head for hours after he left, slamming the door. I spent that whole night awake, tossing and turning in bed, while the word selfish resonated in my mind like an endless echo. Was I selfish for wanting to protect my life savings? Was I selfish for asking for advice before handing over $300,000? The guilt was eating me alive. I thought of my grandchildren, of their innocent little faces, of everything they deserved. If I didn't help them, who would? James was right about something. I had this house, I had the lots, I wasn't going to starve. But something inside me, a small little voice I tried to ignore, told me something wasn't right. At 7 a.m, my phone rang. It was Jessica. Good morning, Mom. Excuse me for calling so early, but I need to talk to you. James is very hurt. Last night he couldn't sleep thinking that you distrust him. As a mother, you must understand what it means when your own mom doesn't believe in you. Her voice sounded soft, almost maternal, but there was something calculated in every word. I come from a very united family, where we all support each other without hesitation. My grandmother always said family comes first, that money comes and goes, but blood remains. I felt small, ashamed. It's not that I distrust, I tried to explain. It is just that David advised me. Jessica interrupted me with a sigh. David is a stranger, Mom. We are your family. Besides, doesn't it seem suspicious to you that a lawyer tells you not to invest in your grandchildren's education? Maybe he has other interests. You know how these professionals are, always looking to charge for their services. Her words sowed doubts about David, about my own instincts, about everything. Think about it carefully, Jessica continued. This opportunity closes tomorrow. If we lose it, your grandchildren are going to have to go into debt for their whole lives to be able to study. They are going to work paying student loans for decades. Is that what you want for them? You have the power to change their lives right now. I hung up feeling dizzy, confused, trapped between the love for my grandchildren and that sense of alarm I couldn't silence. I looked around my living room, the photos of James on the wall from when he was a baby until his wedding, the images of my grandchildren on their birthdays. This was my family. These were the people I had raised, fed, loved unconditionally. How could I doubt them? That afternoon I called James. It's okay, son, I'll do the transfer. The silence on the other end lasted a few eternal seconds. Then his voice sounded relieved, almost exalted. Thanks, Mom. Thank you. You won't regret it. The kids are going to be so grateful. I'm heading over right now to help you with the process. In less than 30 minutes, he was at my door with his laptop and all the documents. We sat in the dining room where we had shared family lunches so many times. James opened his computer and began to guide me step by step. First, you need to log in to your online banking. His fingers moved fast over the keyboard. Give me your username and password to speed this up. Something in me resisted. I prefer to do it myself, I said, taking the laptop. I saw a flash of annoyance in his eyes, but he nodded. I entered my bank account and saw the number that had cost me so much to accumulate, $305,000. There was the result of 35 years of early mornings, needles in my fingers, eyes tired from sewing under dim light, every sacrifice converted into numbers on a screen. James dictated a bank account number for me to make the transfer. Whose account is this? I asked. It belongs to the investment fund, Mom. That is how it works. They receive the money and then send you all the official documentation. My hands trembled over the keyboard. Do it, Mom. You are one click away from securing your grandchildren's future. I closed my eyes and pressed confirm. $300,000 disappeared from my account in a second. James smiled widely and hugged me. You are the best mom in the world. The kids are going to be so happy when they find out. But while he hugged me, I didn't feel warmth. I felt a freezing emptiness in my stomach. For the next few days, I waited for the documentation James had promised. It is almost here, Mom. These processes take time, he would tell me every time I asked. But what I really noticed was the drastic change in his behavior. The phone calls that were scarce before were now non-existent. When I dialed, it went straight to voicemail. The messages I sent went unanswered for hours, sometimes days. 1 week after the transfer, I decided to visit them without warning. I needed to see my grandchildren, hug them, feel that I had done the right thing. I rang the doorbell several times. I heard movement inside, voices that suddenly went quiet. Finally, Jessica opened the door with an expression that no longer tried to hide her annoyance. Mom, it is not a good time. The kids are doing homework and can't be distracted. I just want to say hello for 5 minutes, I pleaded. Today is not possible. Maybe another day. We'll let you know. And she closed the door in my face. I stood there, feeling the tears starting to burn my eyes. Something was terribly wrong. I knew it in every fiber of my being, but it was already too late. The money was gone. I walked back home slowly. Every step weighed on me as if I were carrying stones. Susan saw me from her window and came out to meet me. Eleanor, are you okay? You look pale. I couldn't hold it in anymore and told her everything. The transfer, the promises, the constant rejection. Susan hugged me while I cried on her shoulder. Oh, friend, I have to tell you something I didn't want to mention before. My heart stopped. I saw Jessica 2 days ago at a travel agency downtown. She was with James looking at packages for Europe. I heard when she told the people they wanted something exclusive, luxury, for 2 people for 3 months. Europe. 3 months. Luxury. The pieces started to fit together in a horrible way. But they said it was for the kids' college, I murmured. Susan looked at me with sadness. Eleanor, I think you should investigate that investment fund more. That night I called David and told him I had made the transfer despite his warnings. The silence on the other end was deafening. Eleanor, give me the account number where you sent the money. I am going to investigate. I gave him all the data. 2 hours later, David called me back. His voice sounded serious, worried. Eleanor, that bank account belongs to James. There is no investment fund. You transferred $300,000 directly to your son's personal account. The world collapsed around me. There was no fund. There was no educational investment. There was nothing except my son and daughter-in-law stealing my life savings. What do I do, David? My voice was barely a whisper. For now, nothing. We need proof of fraud if we want to recover that money. Did you keep the documents they gave you? I had them, but they were so vague they probably wouldn't be worth anything. The following days were torture. I kept calling James without getting an answer. Messages were left on read but unanswered. Finally, after almost 2 weeks, Jessica replied with a cold text message. Mom, James is very busy with work. The kids are fine. When we have free time, we will visit you. Best. They didn't even bother to maintain the charade. One afternoon, desperate, I went to their house again. This time I didn't ring the bell. I stayed outside, waiting, watching. I saw when James arrived from work driving a new car, one of those sports models that cost more than $50,000. I saw him enter the house carrying bags from expensive stores. The laughter I heard from outside broke my heart. They were celebrating. They were happy. With my money, I approached the door to knock when I heard raised voices. I froze. I don't understand why you don't answer your mom's calls, I heard James say. Jessica's voice responded clear and loud. Because she already served her purpose. Babe, we already have the money. Now we just need the rest. The rest? My heart beat so fast I thought I was going to faint. I stood paralyzed on the other side of that door, holding my breath, praying they couldn't hear the beating of my heart that echoed in my ears like war drums. Jessica's voice continued, now clearer, crueler. What an idiot. She thinks she is paying for the grandkids' college tuition, but in reality, those $300,000 are for our trip to Europe. I heard my son's laugh. My son, the boy I breastfed, raised, loved with every cell of my body. His laughter was genuine, amused, as if he had just heard the best joke in the world. It's okay, babe. Just don't drag out the transfer of the assets. We still have to sell her house and the land, James replied with a lightness that pierced me like a rusty knife. My mind tried to process what I was hearing, but it was as if the words arrived in a foreign language. Transfer of assets? Sell my house? The land my husband and I bought with decades of effort? I already spoke to the title company, James continued. They told me the easiest thing is to convince her to donate everything to us while she's alive. That way we avoid inheritance taxes and can sell everything faster. With what we get from the house and the land added to the $300,000, we are going to have more than $500,000. Imagine, Jessica. $500,000. We can buy that beach house you like. Travel, live well. Jessica let out a loud laugh. Your mom is so naive she will believe anything we tell her. We can tell her we want to invest in a family business, that we need the properties as collateral for a loan. Whatever. She signs whatever you put in front of her just to make you happy. The words fell on me like drops of acid, burning every illusion I had had about my family. The only thing that worries me is that she talked to that meddling lawyer, James said. What if he turns her against us? Jessica scoffed with contempt. Please, she is an old woman. She is practically senile. Besides, we already put enough guilt in her head. She feels so bad for having doubted you that now she is going to do whatever to make up for it. Reverse psychology always works with these emotional people. I felt my legs start to tremble. I leaned against the wall trying not to make noise, not to give away my presence. Every word was a revelation more painful than the last. Everything had been a lie. Every hug, every I love you, Mom, every promise. Everything calculated, planned, executed with surgical precision to strip me of everything I had. And if she refuses to sign? Jessica asked. James laughed with a confidence that froze my blood. She won't refuse. She is my mother. Her whole life she has lived to please me. Besides, we are going to tell her it is for the well-being of the children, that we want to secure their future. That old woman would do anything for those brats. Brats. He called his own children brats. The grandchildren I supposedly loved so much. Perfect. Then next week we tell her the educational fund documentation arrived, and while we're at it, we bring her the donation papers. We do everything the same day so she doesn't have time to think too much, planned Jessica with a coldness that made me understand this woman was the true brain behind everything. You are brilliant, babe. That is why I love you, James said. I heard sounds of kissing, conspiratorial laughter. Meanwhile, I was on the other side of the door with my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces, still holding the container with the food I had prepared for them. Food made with love for people who saw me as a source of money, as an obstacle between them and wealth. I don't know how long I stood there, in shock, processing the magnitude of the betrayal. Finally, my legs reacted, and I started walking backward, moving away from that door, from that house, from that life I thought I had. I walked past the shiny new sports car carefully, feeling like at any moment I was going to crumble. I reached the street and kept walking aimlessly, tears running down my cheeks uncontrollably. I don't remember how I got to Susan's house. I only remember I knocked on her door and, when she opened, I collapsed completely. I cried like I hadn't cried even when my husband died, because this betrayal hurt differently. It was a pain that came from inside, from the place where you keep your faith in the people you love. Susan hugged me, took me to her living room, made me tea, and waited patiently for me to be able to speak. When finally I could articulate words, I told her everything. Every phrase I had heard, every detail of the macabre plan James and Jessica had woven. Susan listened with a mixture of horror and indignation growing on her face. "Those bastards," she muttered, clenching her fists. "Eleanor, you have to report them. This is fraud. It is breach of trust. They are criminals." But I couldn't think clearly. My mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions: pain, rage, disbelief, shame. How had I been so blind? How did I not see the signs? All the pieces fit now with brutal clarity. The increasingly scarce visits, the constant requests for money, the artificial urgency, the emotional manipulation. I had been the perfect victim. A loving, generous, trusting, and lonely mother. "You need to call David right now," Susan insisted. "You need to protect what you have left before they execute the next step of their plan." She was right. If I didn't act fast, I was going to lose everything. My house, my land, my dignity. David answered on the second ring. I explained between sobs what I had heard. The silence that followed was so heavy I thought the call had dropped. "Eleanor, this is very serious," David finally said with a serious voice. "What you are describing to me is a clear case of fraud and conspiracy. But we need concrete evidence. Do you have any way to record those conversations?" I had nothing. It was my word against theirs. "Tomorrow, first thing in the morning, come to my office. We are going to take immediate legal measures to protect your properties. I am going to put a legal lock on the house and the land so nobody can do anything with them without your physical presence and mine." That night I didn't sleep. I sat in Susan's armchair, staring into the void, reviewing every moment of the last few months. Every sign I ignored, every lie I believed, every manipulation I didn't see. I felt stupid, used, betrayed in the worst possible way. But under all that pain, something else was starting to grow. A spark of rage, of indignation, of a need for justice. At 6 in the morning, I was already awake. Susan made me breakfast, but I couldn't eat anything. My stomach was closed, my throat tight. "You have to be strong now," she told me, taking my hand. "Not for you, but to teach them the lesson they deserve. Nobody can do this and get away with it. Nobody." Her words ignited something inside me. She was right. I couldn't let myself be defeated. I couldn't allow them to steal everything from me without a fight. At 9 o'clock sharp, I was in David's office. He already had several documents prepared. "First, we are going to make a formal statement of what you heard. Second, I am going to register a legal lien on all your properties. Third, we are going to check your bank accounts and change all your passwords and access. Fourth, we are going to explore legal options to recover the $300,000. I signed papers for hours. Every signature was an act of resistance, a refusal to be the passive victim they expected. David was clear with me. Recovering the money is going to be difficult. They can allege it was a gift, a voluntary donation. But if we manage to prove fraud through deception, we have a chance. The most important thing now is that you protect what you have left. I left that office feeling different. I was still hurt, still betrayed, but I no longer felt helpless. I had a plan, I had legal protection, and I had something more important. I had clarity about who the people I called family really were. For the next 3 days, I dedicated myself to preparing for what was coming. David explained that we needed solid evidence if we wanted to have any chance of recovering my money and stopping James and Jessica from continuing with their plan. What you heard is enough to alert us. But in court, we need something tangible. Audio, messages, documents. Something that demonstrates without a doubt that there was an intent to deceive you, he explained while we reviewed options. Susan, who had become my accomplice and unconditional support, had an idea. Eleanor, what if you make them talk again, but this time with your phone recording? The idea terrified and thrilled me at the same time. Could I do it? Could I face him knowing what I knew, feigning ignorance while recording every incriminating word that came out of their mouths? David nodded thoughtfully. It is risky, but it is our best option. You need them to confess their plan themselves, to talk about the money, the supposed college fund, the plan to keep your properties. If you achieve that, we have a solid case. He taught me how to use the voice recorder on my phone, how to position it to capture the audio well, how to ask questions that would lead them to confess without them suspecting. I practiced for hours in front of the mirror. I had to be convincing. I had to seem like the same naive and trusting woman they believed I was. I couldn't let them see the rage boiling under my skin, the pain splitting my chest every time I thought of their betrayal. I had to act, become an actress in my own tragedy. On the 4th day, I took a deep breath and dialed James's number. He answered on the 3rd ring. His voice sounded surprised. "Mom? What happened?" I swallowed hard and forced my voice to sound shaky, vulnerable. "Son, I need to see you. I am very worried. Weeks have passed and I haven't received any documents from that educational fund. Plus, the bank called me asking about the large transfer I made. I'm scared. I heard James consulting something with someone on the other side. Surely Jessica. Calm down, Mom. It is normal for the bank to ask those questions for security. And the documents are almost ready. I had told you. Why don't you come to the house tomorrow and we can talk calmly? Jessica made that cheesecake you like so much." The change in his tone was chilling. From cold and distant, he had gone to warm and welcoming in seconds. Pure acting. "Tomorrow at what time?" I asked. "At 3 in the afternoon is perfect. The kids are going to be at their activities, so we can talk calmly like adults." "Perfect. No innocent witnesses. I will be there, son. Thank you." I hung up and looked at Susan, who had been listening to the whole conversation. "You did very well," she told me, squeezing my hand. "Now only the hard part is missing." That night I couldn't sleep again. I reviewed again and again what I was going to do. David had given me clear instructions. Arrive, activate the recorder discreetly, ask questions about the educational fund, mention my properties, let them talk. Scammers have enormous egos, he had told me. If they think they already won, they are going to want to brag about their plan. Let them talk. At 2:30 in the afternoon the next day, I got ready with care. I put on my cream-colored dress, the one I always used for important occasions. I put on light makeup to not look like I had spent nights crying. I put my phone in my jacket pocket, with the recorder already activated. Susan accompanied me to the door of my house. "You are brave, Eleanor. You are stronger than they ever imagined. Now go and show them who you really are." I drove to James's house, with my hands sweating on the steering wheel. Every traffic light seemed to last an eternity. When I arrived, I saw the new car parked in the driveway, that bright red sports car they had bought with my money. I took 3 deep breaths before getting out of the car. I could do this. I had to do it. I rang the doorbell, and Jessica opened with a huge, fake, perfectly calculated smile. "Dearest Mom, so good you came. Come in, come in." She hugged me, and her expensive perfume made me dizzy. Everything about her screamed luxury: the new watch on her wrist, the diamond earrings, the silk blouse, all paid for with the savings I had accumulated sewing for decades. James was sitting in the living room, relaxed, with a glass of wine in his hand. "Hi, Mom. Sit down, make yourself comfortable." I sat in the armchair facing them, positioning myself so that the phone in my pocket could capture the audio well. Jessica brought coffee and that cheesecake James mentioned. The smell turned my stomach, but I smiled and accepted a piece. "Well, Mom, I know you are worried about the educational fund documents," James began with a soothing tone. "The truth is there is a small administrative delay, but nothing to worry about. Everything is in order." I nodded, playing my part. "It is just that almost 3 weeks have passed, son, and it was so much money. $300,000, my life savings." Jessica intervened with that honeyed voice I now recognized as completely fake. "We know, Mom, and believe me, we value your generosity very much. Your grandchildren are going to have the best education thanks to you. They are going to study at the best universities. They are going to have incredible opportunities." I let a few seconds pass before continuing with my next question, the most important one. "Son, the other day I was thinking, you guys are right that this house is very big for me alone, and I have been considering what you said a few months ago about doing the transfer of assets while alive." I saw how James's eyes lit up like a predator watching its prey approach voluntarily. "Yes, you are considering it seriously?" "Yes," I lied, feeling dirty inside. "It is just that I don't want you to have to deal with taxes and complicated paperwork when I am gone. If I transfer everything to you now, the house and the 2 lots, it would be easier for everyone, right?" Jessica leaned forward, her excitement barely contained. "Exactly, Mom. That is exactly what we have been saying. Besides, that way you can rest easy knowing everything is arranged." James got up and sat next to me on the sofa. "Mom, that would be the smartest thing. Look, I am going to be honest with you." My heart beat faster. Here it came. "Jessica and I have been looking at investment options. With the properties you transfer to us, we can get loans to invest in very profitable businesses. We are talking about multiplying that value in a few years, and all that would eventually be for the kids, too." "What kind of businesses?" I asked, feigning interest. Jessica responded quickly. "Real estate, mainly. Buying properties, remodeling them, and selling them. It is a very profitable market right now. In fact, we already have buyers interested in one of your lots. We could sell it for more than $100,000. "You already have buyers?" I asked, feigning surprise. James nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, Mom. That is why it is important we do the transfer soon. We can't lose these opportunities. Imagine, with the money from the sale of the lots and eventually from this house, added to what you already invested in the kids, we are going to be very well off financially. And you don't have to worry about anything. We are going to take care of everything." "And where would I live if we sell the house?" I asked with a small voice. Jessica took my hand with that falseness that made me want to scream. "Oh, Mom, don't worry about that. We can get you a small, comfortable apartment. Something modern, easy to maintain. Or you could even live with us for a season while we find something perfect for you." James continued. "Besides, Mom, let's be realistic. This house needs a lot of repairs. The roof, the plumbing, the floors. It is going to require a big investment soon. It is better to sell it now that it is in relatively good condition and get a good price. We handle the whole process. You just have to sign the papers. And the educational fund documents?" I insisted. I needed everything recorded. James exchanged a quick look with Jessica before responding. "Well, Mom, being completely honest with you, we are using that money in a smarter way than we initially thought." My stomach contracted, but I kept my expression neutral, expectant. "What do you mean, son?" Jessica settled into the armchair, crossed her legs, and with a smile that tried to be reassuring explained. "You see, Mom, after analyzing the options well, we realized that investing that money directly in the children's education was not the most profitable thing. The kids are still small. Years are left before college. So we decided to use those $300,000 for investments that generate more money. That way, when the moment comes to pay for college, we are going to have much more than the original $300,000. "Exact," added James with enthusiasm, completely oblivious that every word was being recorded on my phone. For example, we are planning a business trip to Europe. We are going to spend 3 months visiting possible business partners, exploring markets, making important contacts. It is an investment in our professional future that is eventually going to benefit the whole family, including the kids. It was hard to keep a poker face. Business trip? 3 months in Europe? They really believed I was so stupid I would swallow any lie they told me. Sounds interesting, I said with a trembling voice. And when do you plan to take that trip? Jessica practically glowed with excitement. In 2 months. We are already making the reservations. We are going to Paris, Rome, Barcelona, London. They are key cities for the businesses we want to develop. James got up and went to look for something in his study. He returned with a folder. In fact, Mom, taking advantage of you being here, I brought you the property transfer documents. If you sign them today, we can start the process immediately and have everything ready before our trip. He opened the folder and took out several papers. Look, here is the deed of gift for the house. Here for the 2 lots. We just need your signatures, and we are going to take them to the title company tomorrow ourselves. I took the documents with trembling hands. This time the trembling was real. There it all was, black on white, the complete transfer of my properties to James's name. If I signed those papers, I would be left with nothing. No house, no land, no savings, no family. I would be a 66-year-old woman, completely destitute thanks to the greed of her own son. It is a lot to process, I said, leaving the papers on the table. Jessica tensed slightly. What is there to process, Mom? It is simple. You sign, we take care of everything, and you live calmly knowing you are securing your family's future. There was a note of impatience in her voice. She couldn't hide completely. It is just that. It is my house, I said with a broken voice. And this time, I wasn't acting. It really hurt. The house where I lived with my husband for 30 years, where I raised James, where all my memories are. James sighed with exaggerated patience, as if he were dealing with a capricious child. Mom, I understand there is sentimental value, but you have to be practical. Memories are in your heart, not in the walls. And think of your grandchildren. Don't you want them to have a better future? Always the grandchildren. They always use those innocent children as a shield for their greed. Of course I want the best for them, I responded. It is just that I need time to think about it. To talk to David maybe, so he can explain the legal and tax implications well. The reaction was immediate. James's face hardened. Again with David. Mom, that man doesn't have your best interests in mind. Lawyers just want to charge you for expensive consultations. Jessica intervened with more harshness than she had shown until now. Mom, with all due respect, you already gave us $300,000 without consulting anyone. Why do you want to talk to lawyers now? Do you simply not trust us anymore? Because if that is the case, maybe you should tell us clearly. Her mask of the sweet daughter-in-law was starting to crack. It's not that, I hurried to say, maintaining my role of the insecure and easily manipulatable woman. I just want to be sure everything is done correctly. It's just that the bank scared me when they called. They asked me so many questions about the transfer. They said it was unusual to transfer so much money at once. They even asked me if someone was forcing me to do it. I saw James and Jessica exchange looks of concern. What did you tell them? Asked James with a sharper tone. I told them the truth, that it was for my grandchildren's education. Did I do wrong? He breathed a sigh of relief. No, you didn't do wrong. It is just that banks are very meticulous now with large transfers. But don't worry, everything is in order. They have no reason to keep bothering you. I decided to press a little more. I needed more recorded confessions. Son, when exactly am I going to see the educational fund documents? It's just that almost a month has passed and nothing. James ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration he had done since he was a boy when confronted. Mom, I already explained to you that we are using that money differently. There are no educational fund documents because we decided to invest directly in businesses. It is better this way, believe me. But you told me it was specifically for a fund that guaranteed the kids' college. I insisted with a soft but firm voice. You showed me papers, figures. You said it was a unique opportunity that closed in 3 days. Jessica let out a nervous laugh. Well, Mom, things change. Plans adapt. The important thing is that that money is being used well for everyone's benefit. Where exactly is that money right now? I asked, looking him directly in the eyes. James shifted uncomfortably in his seat. It is in investments. Mom, in accounts, in reservations for the business trip, in down payments for opportunities we are exploring. It is working for us, generating more value. Isn't that what you wanted? That the grandkids had a secured future? I got up slowly from the armchair, feeling how every muscle in my body was tense. I need to use the bathroom, I said. Excuse me a moment. Jessica pointed toward the hallway. Sure, Mom, you know where it is. I walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red, my face pale, but I had achieved what I came to do. I had the confession. I had the proof. I checked my phone discreetly. The recording was still active. I had captured everything. Their own voices admitting there was no educational fund, that the money was being used for them, that they planned to sell my properties, that everything had been an elaborate lie. I took a deep breath, splashed water on my face, and returned to the living room. You know what, son? I said with a firmer voice than I had used all afternoon. I think you are right. I am going to sign the papers. Both of their eyes lit up like Christmas trees. Really, Mom? James practically jumped off the couch. Yes, but let me take them home to read them calmly tonight. Tomorrow I will stop by the notary and sign them there directly. That way everything remains legal from the start. I could see the disappointment on their faces, but they nodded. Okay, Mom. Take the documents, but please do it tomorrow. It is important we don't waste more time. We are already behind with several things. I took the folder with the donation papers, the same ones they planned to use to strip me of everything. I will do it, son, tomorrow without fail. Jessica walked me to the door with renewed kindness. Thanks for understanding, Mom. You are going to see that this is the best for everyone. In a few years, you are going to thank us. I hugged her, and while I did, I thought of all the times this woman had manipulated me, lied to me, used me. Until tomorrow, I said with a smile that hurt my soul. I got into my car and drove to the corner. There I stopped, took out my phone, and stopped the recording. 52 minutes of audio, 52 minutes of confessions, revealed plans, exposed lies. I had everything I needed. I dialed David's number with trembling hands. I have it, I said when he answered. I have the entire confession recorded. Excellent work. Eleanor, come to my office right now. We are going to listen to that recording and plan the next steps. This is over for them. I drove toward his office feeling a strange mix of triumph and pain. I had gotten the evidence. I had protected my assets. But the price had been confirming that my son, the person I loved most in the world, was a scammer without a conscience willing to leave me on the street. Susan was waiting for me in David's office. When I entered, she hugged me tight. You did it, friend. You were so brave. David ushered us in, and for the next 2 hours, we listened to the complete recording. Every word was like a dagger, but they were necessary daggers. It was the truth in its rawest and most painful form. This is pure gold in legal terms, David said with satisfaction. We have admission of fraud, conspiracy to strip you of your assets, confession that no educational fund existed. With this, we can file criminal charges if you want, and we can definitely sue for the return of the money. Criminal charges, I repeated, feeling my voice crack. One thing was protecting myself, recovering my money, preventing them from stealing more. Another very different thing was sending my own son to jail. David noticed my internal conflict and softened his tone. Eleanor, I understand he is your son, but what he and Jessica did is a serious crime. Not only did they lie to you, they scammed you systematically. This was premeditated, calculated. And if you don't stop him now, they are going to keep doing it. Maybe not just with you, but with other people. Susan squeezed my hand. Friend, I know it hurts, but you have to think about you. They didn't think about you when they planned to leave you with nothing. They didn't think about you when they laughed at your trust. They didn't think about you when they spent your money on luxuries while you eat alone in that empty house. Her words were harsh but true. Each of them was a truth I needed to hear. Let me think about it tonight, I said finally. I need to process all this. I need to decide how far I am willing to go. David nodded understandingly. Okay. But meanwhile, tomorrow, first thing I am going to file a civil lawsuit for the return of the money. That is non-negotiable. They stole $300,000 from you through deceit and fraud. That money has to return to your account. That night, alone in my house, I sat in the dining room with a cup of tea that went cold without me taking a sip. I looked at the walls full of photographs of James at different stages of his life. The smiling baby in my arms, the proud boy on his first day of school, the teenager graduating, the man at his wedding. At what moment did I lose that boy? Or maybe he never really existed the way I believed. Was he always a selfish person waiting for the opportunity to take advantage of me? My phone rang near 11 at night. It was James. "Hi, Mom. Just calling to confirm you are going to the notary early tomorrow. I already made an appointment for 10 in the morning. I'll pick you up at 9:30. His voice sounded animated, anxious to close his master stroke. "Son, we need to talk," I said with a serious voice. There was a pause. "About what, Mom?" "We already talked about everything this afternoon. I need you to come tomorrow to my house, you and Jessica. Before going to the notary, there is something important I must tell you." I could feel his frustration through the phone. "Mom, don't tell me you are regretting it again. We had already agreed on something." His tone was becoming sharp. "I am not regretting it. I just need you to come. At 9 in the morning. It is important." "All right," he replied with an exaggerated sigh. "We will be there. But make it fast because the appointment with the notary can't be moved." He hung up without saying goodbye. Not even an "I love you, Mom," as he used to do when he was a boy. Or maybe he had never said it sincerely, and I simply wanted to believe it. I called David. "Tomorrow at 9 in the morning they are coming to my house. I want to confront them with the evidence. I want them to know that I know everything." David remained silent for a few seconds. "Are you sure? We could handle this legally without direct confrontation." But I needed this. I needed to see their faces when they knew their plan had failed. I needed them to know I wasn't the stupid old woman they thought I was. "I want you there, David, as my lawyer, and Susan is also going to be present as a witness." David accepted. "Okay. I will arrive at 8:30 to prepare everything. And Eleanor, you are going to need to be very strong. They are going to deny, they are going to cry, they are going to manipulate. You are going to have to stand firm." I knew it. I knew my son. I knew his tactics, but this time I had something he didn't expect. Irrefutable proof. The next morning I got up before sunrise. I showered, dressed in my gray suit, the one I used for formal occasions. I applied makeup carefully to hide the dark circles from so many sleepless nights. I wanted to look strong, dignified, not like the shattered victim I felt inside. David arrived punctually at 8:30 with his briefcase full of legal documents. Susan arrived minutes later with coffee for everyone. We organized the living room like a small court. David sat in an armchair with his documents. I sat in my favorite chair, the one that had been my husband's. Susan stood near the window. At 9 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, got up, and opened the door. James and Jessica entered with forced smiles that froze when they saw David and Susan. "What is this, Mom?" asked James with a tense voice. "Why is David here?" I invited them to sit with a gesture. Jessica settled on the sofa with a cautious expression, her eyes moving between all of us trying to decipher what was happening. James remained standing, clearly uncomfortable. "Sit down, son," I said with a firm voice. Something in my tone made him obey. "I called you because we have to talk about something very serious," I began. My hands trembled slightly, but my voice remained stable. "Yesterday when I went to your house, you told me many things. You told me about the educational fund that turned out not to exist. You told me about using my money for a trip to Europe. You explained your plans to sell my properties. I saw how both paled gradually. I also heard other things," I continued, taking out my phone. "For example, a few days ago I went to visit you without warning. The door was ajar, and I heard a very interesting conversation." Jessica went rigid. James started to shake his head. "I don't know what you are talking about, Mom." I smiled without humor. "No? Let me refresh your memory." I pressed play on my phone. Jessica's voice filled the room, clear and sharp. What an idiot. She thinks she is paying for the grandkids' college tuition, but in reality, Those $300,000 are for our trip to Europe. James's laughter followed, his own voice saying, "It's okay, babe, just don't drag out the transfer of the assets. We still have to sell her house and the land." I saw how the color completely disappeared from their faces. Jessica opened her mouth, but no sound came out. James stood up abruptly. "Turn that off. You have no right to record private conversations." David intervened with a professional and cold voice. "Actually, in this jurisdiction, she does have the right. And there is more. Much more." I nodded and let the recording from yesterday continue playing, where they themselves confessed their entire plan. When it finished, the silence in the room was so thick it could be cut with a knife. Jessica was the first to react. "Mom, this is a misunderstanding. We were joking. You know how couples are. Sometimes one says things that aren't serious." Her voice sounded desperate, the mask of sweetness completely destroyed. "Joking?" I repeated with incredulity. "Calling me an idiot is a joke? Planning to leave me homeless is a joke? Stealing my life savings is a joke?" James approached me with hands extended. "Mom, listen to me. Yes, maybe we said some incorrect things, but it was never our intention to hurt you. The money really is for the kids, only we are handling it differently." "Lie," I said, standing up to face him. "Every word that came out of your mouth was a lie. There is no educational fund. There never was. You deceived me, manipulated me, used your own children as an excuse to rob me. And the worst part of all is that you don't feel even a pinch of remorse." I saw something in his eyes then, something I had never seen before. Pure resentment, without filters. "Do you want to know the truth, Mom?" he said with a hard voice. "The truth is that we deserved that money. All my life I had to hear about your sacrifices, about how much you worked, about everything you did for me, as if I had asked you for it. I didn't ask to be born. I didn't ask you to kill yourself working. That was your decision. And now that you finally have money, what were you going to do with it? Leave it in the bank until you die? We can use it now, enjoy it, live well." His words hit me like physical slaps. This wasn't my son. Or maybe he was, and I never wanted to see it. Jessica tried to shut him up, but he continued, the floodgates of his true self finally open. "Besides, technically that money is mine anyway. It is my inheritance. I am just taking it in advance." David stood up. "James, I suggest you shut up right now. Every word you say is worsening your legal situation." James laughed bitterly. "Legal situation? She is my mother. She is not going to sue me. She doesn't have the guts." He looked at me with contempt. "All your life you have been weak, Mom. Always yielding, always pleasing, always seeking approval. That is why it was so easy. Those words were the catalyst I needed. All the doubt, all the guilt, all the pain I had been feeling transformed into something different. Absolute clarity. I looked at this man in front of me, this stranger wearing my son's face, and finally saw him as he was. He wasn't Jessica's victim. He wasn't a good man who made a mistake. He was a predator who had been waiting patiently for his chance to attack. "You are right about something, James," I said with a calm voice that even surprised me. I was weak. I was compliant. But that ended today. I turned toward David. "I want to file all possible charges, civil and criminal. I want to recover every penny of my money, and I want them to face the legal consequences of what they did." The arrogance on James's face turned into shock. "You aren't serious." David opened his briefcase and took out several documents. "Oh, she is very serious. I have here a civil lawsuit for $300,000, plus interest and damages. I also have a criminal complaint for fraud, obtaining money by deception, and conspiracy to commit additional fraud. And we have all the necessary evidence to proceed." Jessica finally exploded. "This is ridiculous. You can't do this to us. We are your family." She stood up from the sofa with clenched fists. "You gave us that money voluntarily. Nobody forced you. There is no fraud here." Susan, who had remained quiet until now, intervened. "You forced her with lies. You told her it was for her grandchildren's education. That is fraud by definition. Besides," continued David, taking out more papers, "we have the recording where you admit yourselves that there was no educational fund, that you planned to use the money for yourselves, and that you also conspired to strip Eleanor of her properties through further deceit. This is not a difficult case to prove. It is quite simple, actually. James approached me with an expression that tried to be pleading, but couldn't hide the underlying rage. Mom, don't do this. Think of the kids. Do you want your grandkids to grow up knowing their grandmother put their father in jail? Using those children once again as a shield. Your children are going to grow up, I responded with a firm voice. And someday I am going to tell them the truth about what their parents tried to do to me. And they are going to understand that defending your dignity isn't a crime. Stealing from your own mother is. Jessica changed tactics, her eyes filled with instant tears. Mom, please. We made a mistake. We admit it. But we can fix it. We can return the money to you, all of it. Just give us time. David shook his head. It is too late for that. You already spent a large part of the money. The new $50,000 car. The reservations for Europe that cost another $30,000. The designer clothes. The jewelry. Where are you going to get $300,000 to return? We can sell the car, said James desperately. We can cancel the trip. We can make payments. Please, Mom, don't destroy your own family over money. I laughed without humor. I destroy my family? You destroyed this family the day you decided to see me as a source of money instead of a human being who loved you. You turned me into your victim. I am just defending myself. David began to explain the legal process. Eleanor will file the civil lawsuit today. The judge will issue a freezing order on all your accounts until the case is resolved. We will also request the seizure of the automobile and any other asset bought with the defrauded money. As for the criminal charges, that depends on if Eleanor decides to proceed. But I warn you that with the evidence we have, a conviction is practically certain. Freezing of accounts. Jessica paled even more. You can't do that. We have expenses, commitments, the kids. Susan interrupted her coldly. You should have thought about your children before stealing from their grandmother. You should have thought about the consequences before planning to leave her with nothing. Actions have consequences, Jessica. Welcome to reality. James looked around like a cornered animal, looking for an exit that didn't exist. Okay. What do you want? What do we have to do so you don't file those charges? His voice had lost all arrogance. Now it sounded small, scared. I want my money back. The complete $300,000. In my account. This week, I said without hesitating. It is impossible, he whispered. We don't have that much money available. David shrugged. Then you will have to get it. Sell the car, ask for loans, mortgage whatever you have. It is not Eleanor's problem how you get it, only that you do. And furthermore, I want you to sign a document where you renounce any future claim on Eleanor's properties. Never again are you going to be able to touch her house or her land. And one more thing, I added, feeling my voice become stronger with every word. I want you to tell the truth to the whole family. To your uncles, to your cousins, to your grandparents who still live. I want everyone to know what you tried to do. I am not going to allow you to paint me as the villain of this story. James shook his head repeatedly. They are going to hate us. They are going to cut all contact with us. Well, I said, crossing my arms, then you will know how it feels to be rejected by your own family. Maybe it gives you perspective. Jessica let herself fall onto the sofa, crying now without control. But I no longer felt compassion. I had seen her true face. These tears were just another manipulation, another desperate attempt to move me. It wasn't going to work. David continued with the details. You have until Friday to deposit the $300,000 into Eleanor's account. If you don't do it, we will proceed with all charges first thing Monday morning. The car will be seized tomorrow as part of the evidence of fraud. The reservations for Europe obviously get cancelled. And you are going to sign the rights waiver documents today, before leaving here. How are we going to get $300,000 in 3 days? Shouted James with despair. I don't know, and I don't care. I responded with a coldness I didn't know I possessed. Maybe ask Jessica's parents for help, those who are supposedly so united and generous. Or maybe get a loan, or maybe sell things. What you do is your problem. My only problem is recovering what is mine. Susan approached and put a hand on my shoulder in a sign of support. And while you look for how to get the money, remember every night how you laughed at her, how you called her an idiot, how you plan to leave her without a roof over her head. Maybe that gives you the necessary motivation to comply." Her words were harsh but necessary. These two needed to understand the gravity of what they had done. David took out the rights waiver documents. These papers establish that James and Jessica permanently renounce any claim on the house located at this address and the 2 lots registered under Eleanor's name. This is irrevocable. Even after her death, these properties will not form part of James's inheritance. Sign here, here, and here. He pointed to the lines with his pen. James took the pen with a trembling hand. "Mom, please, don't do this to me. I am your son." He looked at me with eyes seeking the compliant woman I had always been. But that woman had died the day I heard his truth on the other side of the door. "Sign," I said simply. And he did. Jessica also signed, her tears staining the paper. "Now," said David, putting the signed documents in his briefcase, "let's make something very clear. If you try to approach Eleanor to intimidate her, manipulate her, or threaten her in any way, that will be additional evidence for the criminal charges. If you contact other family members to pressure her, that will also count against you. Your best option is to get the money, deposit it, and pray that Eleanor is merciful." "And if we do it?" asked James with a hoarse voice. "If we return all the money, you won't file the criminal charges?" I looked at him for a long moment. Part of me, that part that was still a mother, wanted to say yes. But another part, the part that had learned a brutal lesson about human nature, knew that would be a mistake. "If you return the complete money by Friday," I said finally, "I won't file the criminal charges, but I am going to keep the civil lawsuit on file in case you ever try something similar. And our contact from now on will be minimal and supervised." "What does that mean?" asked Jessica, wiping her tears. "It means," I explained with pain in my chest, "that I am not going to pretend we are a happy family. I am not going to your dinners. I am not going to celebrate holidays with you. You broke something that cannot be repaired. Regarding my grandchildren, when they are big enough to understand, they will decide if they want to have contact with me. But I am not going to allow you to use me to continue manipulating them." The silence that followed was absolute. James and Jessica looked at each other, the reality of their situation finally penetrating their minds. They had lost. Their perfect plan, their master stroke, had collapsed completely. And now they faced the consequences of their greed. David handed them a copy of all the documents. "You have my number. When you deposit the money, notify me immediately. And remember, Friday at the latest, not a minute later." They got up to leave, defeated, destroyed. James stopped at the door and looked at me one last time. For a moment I thought he was going to apologize, that maybe some humanity remained in him. But what he said was, "This isn't over, Mom. You are going to regret it." David immediately took out his phone. "Thanks for that threat. It was recorded. Now I have more evidence in case I need it." James left, slamming the door. Jessica followed him in silence. When the sound of their car faded into the distance, my legs finally gave way. I let myself fall into the armchair while all the weight of what had just happened hit me like a wave. I had confronted my son. I had destroyed any possibility of reconciliation. I had chosen my dignity over my family. Susan sat next to me and hugged me while I cried. They weren't tears of regret. They were tears of mourning. I was mourning the death of an illusion, the loss of a son who maybe never existed the way I believed. "You did the right thing," Susan whispered to me. "You were brave. You were strong. I am so proud of you." Her words comforted me, but they didn't fill the void I felt in my chest. David explained the next steps to me while preparing more documents. "I am going to monitor their accounts. If they try to move money or hide assets, I will know. I am also going to contact some of my colleagues to ensure they can't get loans using your properties as collateral. You are going to be protected, Eleanor. I promise you." I nodded, grateful to have someone on my side who really cared about my well-being. The following days were the strangest of my life. My phone rang constantly with calls from unknown numbers that I didn't answer. Messages arrived one after another, some pleading, others threatening, all desperate. James wrote me entire paragraphs alternating between empty apologies and accusations of being a cruel mother. Jessica sent me photos of my grandchildren with manipulative messages. "They ask about you. You're breaking their hearts." But I stood firm. Every time I felt my resolve waver, I listened to the recordings again. I heard their laughter, their contempt, their plans to leave me with nothing. And I remembered that it wasn't me who had broken this family. It was them. Susan stayed with me those days, making sure I ate, slept, wasn't alone with my destructive thoughts. On Wednesday night, David called me with news. James is asking for loans everywhere. He contacted 3 different banks. All rejected him when they saw his financial situation. He also tried to sell the car, but since it has a lien on it, he can't. He is desperate. There was a satisfaction in his voice that normally would have seemed inappropriate to me, but now I understood. Justice sometimes feels good. On Thursday afternoon, my phone rang with a number I recognized. Jessica's mother. I hesitated before answering, but finally did. Mrs. Eleanor. Her voice sounded tense. I am Jessica's mom. I need to speak with you. I prepared myself for another manipulation session. Tell me. There was a long sigh on the other end. Jessica told me everything. Well, her version at first, but I am not stupid. I called other people. I asked questions. And I think I know the truth. And? I asked cautiously. And I want you to know that I am ashamed. Ashamed of my daughter, of what she did. If I had known she was planning something like that, I would have stopped her. Stealing from one's own family, especially an older lady, is unforgivable. Her words surprised me. I expected defense, not condemnation. My husband and I have decided to help pay the debt, not because we approve of what they did, but because it is our grandchildren who are going to suffer if their parents go to prison. We are going to contribute $100,000. James will have to get the rest. I appreciate your help, I said sincerely. But let it be clear that this does not erase what your daughter and my son did. I am not being cruel. I am being just. Jessica's mother sighed again. I understand completely. If someone did this to my mother, I would react the same or worse. I only ask that when this ends, if it is possible, don't completely close the door with the children. They are innocent in all this. That conversation gave me some peace. At least there was one more person in this disaster who understood the gravity of the situation. On Friday morning, at 10 o'clock sharp, David called me. Eleanor, a deposit just came into your account. $300,000 exactly. I felt something in my chest relax for the first time in weeks. My money had returned. Not everything was lost. That afternoon, I kept my word. I didn't file the criminal charges, but I kept the civil lawsuit filed as a warning. David ensured all legal documents were in order, protecting my properties forever. James and Jessica had learned an expensive lesson, that stealing has consequences, even when you steal from your own family. The weeks that followed were of adjustment. The extended family found out about everything, not because I told the story, but because they themselves started asking questions when James and Jessica stopped appearing at family gatherings. Some supported me unconditionally. Others thought I had been too harsh. Some tried to mediate, to convince me to forgive. But I had learned that forgiveness does not mean allowing them to keep hurting you. The grandchildren were the hardest part. I thought about them constantly, wondering if they missed me, if they understood why their grandmother wasn't going to visit them anymore. But I knew that someday, when they were older, I could explain the truth to them, and they would decide for themselves what kind of relationship they wanted to have with me. Until then, I had to protect myself. Susan became my chosen family. We shared dinners, walks, movies. She introduced me to her group of friends, all older women who had lived their own battles and betrayals. I found in them a sisterhood I had never had. I learned that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it is the people you choose, who choose you, who stay when everything collapses. David became more than my lawyer. He became a trusted friend, someone who helped me reorganize my finances, make a real will that protected my wishes, plan my future with clarity. You have recovered your power, Eleanor, he told me one day, while we signed the last documents. Many people in your situation never do. They remain victims their whole lives. But you decided to be a survivor. 6 months after the confrontation, I received a letter. It was from James. I opened it with trembling hands, not knowing what to expect. The letter was short. Mom, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I destroyed something that cannot be repaired. Jessica and I are in therapy, trying to understand why we did what we did. I don't expect you to believe me, but I needed you to know that finally I understand the magnitude of my betrayal. The kids ask about you. I have started telling them the truth, adapted to their age. Someday, when you are ready, if you are ever ready, I would like to try to rebuild something. Even if it is just being able to speak politely. But I will understand if you don't want to. With love and regret, James. I read the letter 3 times. I looked for signs of manipulation, of falseness. Maybe it was there. Or maybe not. I no longer trusted my ability to distinguish sincerity from acting when it came to my son. I kept the letter in a drawer without answering. Maybe someday I would be ready. Maybe I never would be. And that was okay. What I did know was this. I had recovered my dignity. I had protected my assets. I had demonstrated that even at 66 years old, even after being betrayed by the person I loved most in the world, I still had the strength to get up and fight. I had become my own hero. And that, I discovered, was more valuable than any forced reconciliation. I sat on the patio of my house, the house I had been about to lose, surrounded by the plants my husband had planted years ago. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I took a sip of my tea and smiled. It was a small smile, still touched by sadness, but it was real. I had survived. I had won. And my future, for the first time in a long time, belonged completely to me. If my story serves for anything, let it serve to remind all mothers, grandmothers, women who give everything for their families. Your generosity should not be confused with weakness. Your love should not become vulnerability. And when someone, no matter who it is, tries to take advantage of that love, you have every right to defend yourself. It isn't cruelty. It is survival. It is justice. It is self-love.